Okay guys, kita kembali. Saya serahkan kembali kepada Profesor Madya, Dr. Norrizah, Jaafar, Sidik untuk part 2 chapter 3. Silakan Doktor. Doktor.
Alright. Boleh nampak. I start now. Now I will continue with the second part of the plasma membrane transport lectures. So we start with the topics on membrane proteins and their functions. So here the proteins determines most of the membrane's functions. If you look at the figures, right? So the proteins, embedded on the phospholipid bilayer, right? So there are peripheral proteins which bound to the surface of the membrane, and also it has the integral proteins which penetrate the hydrophobic core. And if you look here, right, there is also integral proteins that span the membrane, what we call as transmembrane proteins. So the transmembrane proteins, if you look at the figure here, it has the hydrophobic parts, the alpha helical secondary structure. These are the hydrophobic parts. And the hydrophilic segments, which are the non-helical in contact with different aqueous solutions. At the extracellular side, these are the extracellular side, and here is the cytoplasmic side of the membrane. So these are the transmembrane proteins. There are 6 major functions of membrane proteins. If you look here, the membrane proteins act as a transport. It also acts as an enzymatic activity. And it also involved during the signal transduction. It also involved in the cell-to-cell recognitions, and it also acts as an intercellular joining. It also acts as attachment to the cytoskeleton and extracellular matrix. I will go through one by one of the functions of these membrane proteins. First we look at the first function, as a transport protein. Plasma membrane are very selective. They only allow certain solids to enter or leave the cell. So they have the channel here. Channel is like the tunnel where the selective solutes or certain solute can move in or out. So the solutes can enter or it can leave the cell through the channels or carriers. Carriers composed of the proteins. So if you look at the carriers here, it involves the ATP. The ATP. Unlike the channel pore protein here, it does not involve the ATP. So the channel pore protein, it provides a hydrophilic. The membrane protein here, it provides a hydrophilic channel across the membrane that is selective for a particular solute. Whereas the transport carrier protein transport a substance from one side to the other side here by changing its shape. So that one is for the channel for the transport or carrier proteins. Now we look at the membrane protein which involved in the enzymatic activity. Okay. So this protein is built into a membrane, maybe an enzyme, right? Can see here there is an active site. Yeah? So the substrate will enter the active site of the enzyme. Okay, and then it will leaving the active site. Okay, so the active site has a very specific size, shape, suited to bind to a particular substrate. Okay, so active site exposed to the substance in the adjacent solution, that it will attach, it will bind to the active site here. Okay, and then another function is involved in signal transduction process. Okay, so signal transduction process, it refers to the movement of signal, signal from outside the cell, resulting in the change of the in a change in the state of the cells. Okay, so you can see here there is a receptor at the membrane proteins. At the membrane protein, the membrane protein here, it acts as a receptor. Okay, so the signal molecule, for example, like hormones, it will bind to this part. It has a binding site here with a specific shape that fits the shape of the chemical messenger or the signaling molecule, which cause the protein to change the shape. Yes, so this allow message to relay to the inside of the cell. Okay, so here it involved the reception, the transduction. Okay, so at the reception, it binds to the receptor, whereas during transduction, it will change the receptor proteins. Initiates process of this change initiate process of transduction, usually a pathway of several steps, and then go to the next is the response, where the signal will trigger a specific cellular response. Okay, so these are the process, the reception, the signal. There are three processes here: the reception, the signal transduction, and the response. Okay, so you can see the receptor here, where the hormones will attach to the binding site here, and then it produces a reaction, second messenger, and there is a activation of the cellular responses. Okay, signal triggers a specific cellular response. Okay, the next function is involved in cell recognition. So these are cells' ability to distinguish one type of neighboring cell from another. Okay, so the membrane carbohydrates may be covalently bonded to lipids, the glycolipid, or more commonly to protein glycolipids. Okay, some glycoproteins serve as an identification tags. Right? Okay, the next is cell recognize each other by binding to surface molecule, often a carbohydrate or protein on plasma membrane. This is important. Sorting of cell into tissues and organ in animal embryo. Okay, basic for rejection of foreign cell by the immune system in vertebrate animals. carbohydrate on the external side of the plasma membrane vary among species, individual, and even cell types in an individual. So example here given the human blood types. Yeah? So the blood type AB, AB and O here. If you look, the blood types are genetic. There are 4 major blood groups: A, B, AB and O. Okay, so the blood groups based on the antigen, the cell antigen, which are proteins on the cell surface that are recognized by the person's immune system. Okay. All right. Another functions of membrane protein is as intercellular joining molecule. Yeah. So membrane proteins of adjacent cell may hook together in various kinds of junctions. Okay. So there is a gap junctions where it provides cytoplasmic channel between adjacent cells. Tight junction where it preventing leakage of the extracellular fluid. And another function is to attach to the cytoskeleton and extras matrix. Okay, so you can see here, right, in the figure here, attachment to the cytoskeleton and the extracellular matrix. Okay, so microfilament or other elements of the cytoskeleton may be non-covalently bound to membrane proteins. So this one, it helps to maintain the cell shape and also to stabilize the location of certain membranes protein. Okay. So there are altogether, there are 6 main functions of the membrane proteins. Okay, so the last slide is the summative questions. The first question is name 2 types of transport protein. And then the second one is briefly describe how membrane protein evolve in signal transduction process. And the third one is name specialized proteins that are embedded in phospholipid bilayer and describe their functions. So this is the last part of, this is the last slides of part 2. Okay.